Welcome to today's Shed Share session on milking regimes. My name's Joss Black. I'm a training and development advisor for livestock improvement. But today is not about me, it is about the wonderful Mr. Brent Boyce, who is going to be sharing with us the history of milking regimes and how it can have positive impacts for farmers on farm. So let me tell you a little bit more about Mr. Brent Boyce. So Brent was born and bred in Marlborough and comes from a large farming family there. Brent graduated from both Lincoln and Massey universities and has worked in various farming and rural professional roles over his career, and currently resides in the wonderful Tasman district, which is the top of the South Island for those of you who are overseas. Brent has been a farm business consultant in the top of the South for 26 years now, and he's been with Farmwise, part of LIC, since December 2000. Brent's focus is on people, profit, pasture and problem solving, and a passion for cow and farm efficiency and logistics. Brent has spent time overseas, however. He did 18 months in Uruguay as the General Manager of New Zealand Farming Systems Uruguay from 2009 to 2011. And he does have regular trips back to South America doing farm business consultancy. And in 2016, Brent was recognised for his wonderful efforts and was awarded the Dairy NZ New Zealand Farm Consultant of the Year. So that's a fantastic accomplishment for Brent there. So what is Brent going to talk to us about today? It is around milking frequency, milking being the most important activity on the farm, and it does have a big impact on a farm's daily routine and structure. So Brent's going to talk to us about the history and how farmers can maintain productivity and profitability whilst reducing the number of milkings within a lactation. So without any further ado, enough from me. I will now hand over to you. Thanks very much, Brent.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully things are well wherever you are in the world. Today I'm going to talk about milking frequency in New Zealand. In New Zealand, for our overseas people, we're mainly pastoral based. Milking frequency has been a big passion of mine. I was milking cows in Canterbury in the mid-1980s, and times of milking the cows in the afternoon in the late summer when they had very few litres on board was quite galling, and the inefficiencies of that always stuck with me. And so I think I've dedicated probably 35 odd years of my life to actually try and unravel this. So it's a bit of a story, it's a bit of a history, and it's a bit of a mystery. So milking frequency, we've had twice a day, once a day, 3 and 2, and now this 10 and 7, which seems to be taking the world by storm. Now, I'm a fan of all frequencies, let's not deny it. I love twice a day, I love once a day, 3 and 2, 10 and 7, they've all got their places. It's all about choices on your farm. Probably, can we do better with less effort? Because we spend a lot of time in the cow shed, and there's opportunities there for efficiencies and to look after ourselves better and to look after our cows better. An important point to note is, I think even 2 years ago, I think it was 46% of people milk twice a day or a year now in New Zealand, and that number I believe is still falling. So less and less people are full-time twice a day or a year now. Now from the start, sometimes twice a day, sometimes once a day, and really 16 hours. And that was the thing we had. In November 2001, we had quite a serious rainfall event, I guess you'd call it. It went on for several weeks. And I had one of my clients, they were doing 16-hour milking, which was 5 a.m., 9 p.m., 1 p.m., and it was too tough on them. So in that November 2001, I dropped that to 5 a.m., 7 p.m. and 1 p.m. And then we realised in the following lactations in the years following that we could actually change those hours even more. So around Christmas 2005, because we were changing the hours so much, it was no longer a 14, 16, 18-hour split within that 48-hour period for 2 days. I renamed it 3 milkings in 2 days, which seemed quite obvious to me. So I called it 3 and 2. There was a lot of angst from my dear friends in LIC. The herd testing woman never forgave me for a few years because we didn't actually have the algorithms written for actually herd testing for 3 and 2. So that caused a few issues for my company here, and the milking companies, Fonterra and Western, were also very confused by this. So it did take some time and there was some pressure. In 2007, I was asked to present a paper at the International Once a Day Conference, and it was actually on 3 and 2 milking. And that sort of started things to spread things a little bit further around the world. I had quite a following in Tasmania, some good people over there. I've never met some of these people, but yeah, we correspond quite regularly and now doing things like 10 and 7 and other versions. So in 2007 to about 2016, 17, we had a steady uptake of 3 and 2, both here and overseas. In 2016, 17, I got an award, and as part of that, I rewrote the papers on 3 and 2 and how we combined it with twice a day and once a day. And the best thing that happened then was our dear friends in Dairy NZ, they came together and did a research project, which is ongoing. And we started to get some information, some real data and information about what we could achieve on 3 and 2. And I have a lot of anecdotal stuff, but it was really good to actually get some scientific backing coming with this. In February 2018, I had a real light bulb moment on the number of twice a day milkings a week. One of our senior scientists at LIC, Steve Davis, he came and spoke to us at our Farmwise conference and said, look, data set research he could actually do. He believed that we could actually maintain twice a day production if we actually milked the cows just twice a day, twice a week. And that really set the light bulbs off for me. In spring 2019, I actually sat down and actually worked out there was some real gaps in our regime. Probably the saddest thing about this, I should have spotted it years ago, and actually, I blame myself. I should have actually seen this. I meant to be good at this, and I think I let a few people down, but we're here now. Since then, we've had a steady uptake of changes and options with that. Thinking around milking frequency, a traditional milking, if you're on twice a day, this is what we thought decades ago. Everyone was a sheep. This is what you did. If you went once a day, and I just spoke at the Once a Day conference, and I said this as well at the Once a Day conference in Nelson at the start of the month. If you're on once a day, 15, 20 years ago, you're a lazy hippie. And if you're on 16-hour milking, you're confused or you're in trouble. So we've come a long way since then. We're a 7-day-a-week business in a weekend-based society, and here's the crux of it. How can we as an industry, we've got to become more weekend-centric. We've got young people we're trying to attract into our business. How do we look after them better? How do we look after animals in our business better? Is there a way forward? And when we're looking at a lot of our young people, they're not choosing dairying as a career. Is it the hours? It tends to be the hours. Whenever we do any of these surveys, it tends to be the amount of time. Now, if we can reduce the drudgery on the farm and some of the unexpected things that happen, can we improve mental well-being? Because this has been one of the battles, I think, for a lot of farmers, is that it's a sheer workload often, and the mental well-being associated with that and some of the challenges we're getting in other parts of our business, can we help with just the sheer drudgery? So once a day is a great option. And what other options are there? Look, 3 and 2 can be a muddle. High-producing herds. How can we get twice a day production with less milkings? Here's what our current thinking has been on milking frequency. We've been very limited with our vision. We've got twice a day, 3 and 2 once a day. And when you look between these 3 things that we've done, our 3 milking regimes, you've got twice a day, which is 14 milkings in 7 days. You've got good old 3 and 2, which has been my baby from the start. We're milking 10.5 milkings a week. And of course, once a day, we're milking 7 times a week. The daily grind of milking, twice a day milking, has been a standard, but it's these huge gaps here that really stuck with me. So how few can we do? Well, here's what our future looks like. So we've got our twice a day, our 3 and 2 and our once a day. Well, in between, we could have 13 milkings or 12 milkings or 11 milkings in 7 days. Over here, is it possible to do 10 and 7, 9 milkings in 7, 8 and 7? There's an opportunity to fill these gaps. What would these regimes look like? And can the people in production and profitability fit better? And the question I have, and it's for, I guess, us as people, how we actually run our businesses, can we at last become weekend-centric? So this is going to be a pretty busy chart, but let's have a look at this. How few can we do? How do they stack up? So how can we be weekend-centric? So across the top here, I've got twice a day, 3 and 2, our dear old friend, 3 and 2, 10 and 7, 9 and 7 once a day. So that's down the bottom, it's number of milkings a week, 14, 13, 10 and a half, down to 7. And in the yellow here is Saturday and Sunday. And often this is a time where we're missing out being involved in society a lot of the time. A lot of our stuff involves around the weekends, etc. If we look here on the twice a day column, and I've just used 5 a.m. and 3 p.m. the whole time, just to keep it very simple. If you dropped out 1 milking a day, and say dropped 1 out on the Sunday, that'll give you 13 milkings that week. If that worked, you could do 12 milkings, 11 and 7. Here's our dear friend 3 and 2. Now this is the problem with 3 and 2, the change over the weekend. Here's 10 and 7 over here, which is seen to be taking a few people by storm at the moment. So what does that look like? So 10 and 7 versus 3 and 2, if we put them beside each other, what is it? It's twice a day on Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Now those hours can be indicative. And on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, say 10 a.m. and on Sunday it's once a day again. So essentially what we're trying to do, we're avoiding that weekend mess when on 3 and 2. With 3 and 2, it's my baby, and I apologise if anyone's done a lot of 3 and 2. We should have been doing this. But it served its role and it's got us this far. So by taking out, say we're in a fortnight, we do 21 milkings in a fortnight, we've got 20 milkings now in a fortnight on 10 and 7. So the same times based on that first week, the only change is here on the Sunday, we milk at 8 a.m. Now, the reason I say milk a little bit earlier on the Sunday, now that time on Saturday could be 11 or 7, whatever you want to do on the Saturday or the Sunday, to fit in with what you're doing in the weekend, is we're trying to avoid a 24-hour split in that milking time. So I'll show you what I mean with this next slide. Why does 10 and 7 work? Well, these afternoon milkings, these 3 milkings, as per Steve Davis, and this is Steve Davis from LIC's words, those 3 afternoon milkings, they actually rescue the lactation. So the point from Steve and all his stuff was that it's the udder tissue dies after 7 days, but it has a memory until then. And I remember so many times where we've had climatic disasters and the cow's been out for 2 or 3 days in the middle of the season, and we haven't been able to milk the cows for 2 or 3 days. And all of a sudden you put the cows back on and they come back up in production. They will actually, they sit there with their legs crossed. But if you keep milking them, you keep feeding them, 3 or 4 days later you put the cups on them, they'll milk again. You just have to be aware of somatics, etc. We've had a cow here, several instances where the cows have actually gone more than 10 days when they've had thylaria and they've actually come back into milk. Our record is 15 days of a cow that's come back into milk without being milked. So the udder tissue has a memory. Those 3 afternoon milkings, that 3 p.m., those 3 p.m. ones, they will rescue the udder tissue. They will restore that memory and the cows will stay and keep going. Remember, this is what we've done for many years on 3 and 2, except what we've tried to do here is have the weekend. So essentially the udder produces milk linearly for up to about 16 hours. Then it starts to drop off reasonably quickly, up to 36 hours. And I'm relying on Steve's evidence for this. What it means is that our longest break in this regime here is a 22-hour break. And we can change that and rearrange it. In theory, you can milk twice a day, twice a week. You could do 9 and 7. I have some people who've done that. At the moment, 10 and 7 seems where everyone's quite comfortable with. The key to remember is that those 3 twice-a-day milkings, they rescue the udder tissue memory every week. Now, if you're doing 10 and 7 all season, some peak milk production will be lost because you're not actually getting the full amount of milk harvest. But often a lot of that is saved due to less time milking, particularly if you've got a hard farm, lots of long walks, you've got an underpart, or you've got road crossings, or you've got too many cows for not a big enough shed, like you've got 700 cows for a 40 bale and your milkings are extended. This is a great way to do that. So what can we do in reality? Now, some people will do the same milking frequency all season. Like just say you wanted to do 10 and 7 all season. You can adjust the milking hours wider during peak lactation or hot summer. That's what we do over 3 and 2. If you're going to say, well, I'll start on 3 and 2 or 10 and 7 and might do that all season, you might do 5 a.m., 3 p.m., 10 a.m. in the off-peak times like through to mid-September or balance date. Then you might go 5 a.m. and it could be even 7 p.m. Right through October, November, December. Remember, you don't have to, but if you want to try and get the maximum amount of milk out, you could do that. Now that 5 a.m., 7 p.m. one, that tends to be really good here where I live in the top of the south. We get hot summers and we try and avoid the heat. And we'll have guys milking at 5 a.m., sort of 7 p.m. and then sort of 9 a.m. in the heat of the summer. And it's not necessarily for peak milk, it's just to take the peak pressure off the cows and the people as well. It's not as hot that time of the evening. When we're looking at, say, starting on one regime and change to another, if you do that, you might, say, start on 10 and 7 or once a day and then go to twice a day, etc. What you're trying to do is better match the milk harvest frequency with the lactation peak and the spring feed. Where I am, we get a good burst through October, November, and I'll be trying to harvest as much milk as I can then. Now, the hours can be flexible. You know, your splits could be in a 48-hour period. They could be 5, 10 a.m. the next morning. You could have a 10, 19, 19 split, or even 8, 20, 20, or 10, 18, 20, etc. The frequency of milking is more critical than the hours, the rescue. Now, I remember reading the Dairy Exporter several years ago, and there was a woman milking cows in the war, and no, it was a man or two. It was in the Exporter, and she was milking twice a day all season. And the thing that struck me is she was milking twice a day. She was milking at 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. So she had a 6, 18-hour split. And it seemed so unusual. But when she looked at her compared production to other people, and she did it on dairy base as well, she was average like everyone else in the district. She was actually able to do both her milkings in the morning. The key was her frequency. She milked twice a day at 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. So it was the frequency of milk is more critical than the hours, to be precise. And that has been backed up with the work that Dr. Paul Edwards is doing with Dairy NZ at their 3 and 2 and milk and frequency trials down at Lincoln. We can produce the same as twice a day with less milkings if you have a change in milk and frequency through the season. We've got a bit of evidence to say if you do, say, 3 and 2 all season or 10 and 7 all season, etc., you will lose a little bit through the peaks, etc. You may make a bit up on the shoulders with less energy consumed. And my thought is once a day is great for our lower producing herds. You can often equal or better production on once a day for your lower producing herds. But when we get to our higher producing herds, I believe flexible milking suits them better. So what's a good milking regime, mixed flexible milking regime look like? You could say start the season on once a day for up to 3 weeks. And all the research from Dairy NZ here in New Zealand says there's no production losses for up to this first 3 weeks. You know, you might have 60 to 80% of the cows calved. Remember in that first week, there's probably only 25% of the cows have calved. Each week it's exponentially. So only half the cows, or 60, maybe 70% in 3 weeks. There is no production losses that they can statistically find for that. You could then say do twice a day to the end of AI, just before Christmas. You could do 10 and 7, or if you have to, do 3 and 2 until mid-April, then try once a day until the end of the season. I call this logistically lazy feeding. If you're on a 50 paddock farm, the key here, we have a lot of our farms set up with, say, 45 to 55 paddocks. I'll say 50 paddocks. You could feed out 1 paddock per milking from balanced state until the end of the season. So if you're on twice a day through that peak period and just go paddock milking, you probably take some paddocks out for baleage or silage or say for some crops. So you'll be on a 20 to 25 day round. Over that summer period, say from Christmas onwards, when you went to 10 and 7 or 3 and 2, you stay on a paddock of milking. It's about a 33 day round. And in mid-April, you decide I'll slow the round down again to set myself up for winter or for next spring. If you're on once a day, just go to a paddock a day, and it could be a 45 to 50 day round. It works very well, and the cows like it because they get every milking. They know they're getting a full feed. It's very simple for staff as well. We do a lot of it here in the top of the south, particularly, and a lot of people are set up doing 3 and 2 and 10 and 7. This is how we run it. Now, one thing I do know is we can end up with the same production as twice a day if it's done right. Way less effort. And by doing that type of milking regime, you're going to save 15 days of your life. So here's a table to show that. So this beautiful little table here, milkings per period. At the top, it's got twice a day all season. In the top row up here, you've got twice a day all season, once a day, twice a day, 10 and 7 in the red. So what I want to concentrate first here is twice a day. Now our lactation here, typically here in the top of the south, we're only open, our factories are only open from the 1st of August to the 31st of May. That gives us a total of 304 days. If we're on twice a day, That's a total of 608 milkings. And I've just used an arbitrary figure here of 3 hours per milking. That's including getting the cows in the wash up. We've got a good fast shed. We can do 100% of what we're doing twice a day, of course. I'll skip over here to this column over here, twice a day, then once a day. So if you do twice a day till Christmas time, then you say you might go once a day just before Christmas. Now, I'm going to be generalistic here, but you'd normally do 95% of what you could do on twice a day. Nothing else changed. Over here, on once a day, you'll do 90% of what you do on twice a day if nothing else changes. The key down here is the total milkings. Let's go then and look at once a day, twice a day, 10 and 7. So you might do once a day till say the 21st of August, then twice a day till 20th of December, somewhere around there, then 10 and 7 to middle of April, then once a day for the last 45, 46 days of lactation. Look at the total milkings. You've done 304 days, there's 608 milkings possibly there. I've made the hours per milking a little bit longer because they tend to be slower milkings. So if you did this one in red, once a day, twice a day, 10 and 7 once a day, it's 475 milkings. If you do twice a day, then once a day, it's 446, and once a day we'll see if it's 304. The next row down here is milking saved versus twice a day. Come down to the bottom row. These are days of your life that you've saved in that lactation. 15 days. This is 17 days. This is 32 actual days. So that's, and the third row here is, that's 352 hours. I've just worked it all out on that. The key here is this flexible milking one here. Once a day, twice a day, you've better matched the grass supply, the lactation. You'll do the same as twice a day on this red one here. You will do the same production, and some people do better than they do on twice a day. It's pretty stunning, but yeah, that's what happens. So 10 and 7, should you do it? Make the logistics and the practicalities work on your farm. It's you adopt it, then you adapt it. If you want to go to 10 and 7 through the a certain time of the year and say I don't want any losses in production, what you could do is do twice a day, like I said there, and do that until say the Christmas time. Then start on 10 and 7. After 4 to 5 months of lactation, there is a minimal loss. There's usually no issues with somatic cell count, like 3 and 2. It's great for the people. Any downsides? Yes. The downside is if you had a staph problem, for some reason that double milking the weekend upsets it. It'll take a scientist who's very good at that to give a real explanation, but I'll just say that's a word of caution. Here's the thing that I've been really enjoying actually watching this over the last year. Can you go from once a day to 10 and 7 or even 9 and 7? So I've had some guys who are staunch once a day guys, and they have turned around and said, okay, we're not getting our peak milk. We need some extra litres. I've got a town supply chap who does that. And we put the cows, we threw in 3 afternoon milkings. So we did 10 and 7. And the cows jumped up in production, straight up. And one of the herds, we did it in late lactation. We did a similar response. I've been a once a day all season. And it was in mid-March. They had a bit of a feed crisis. We fixed the feed crisis. We got that back. And then we put the cows on 10 and 7. And they jumped up to 1.35 and 0.95 milk solids a cow a day. So at any stage in lactation, it's quite possible to increase milk production by throwing in those 3 afternoon milkings if you're on once a day. If the feed situation improves or any other situation or the climate improves, there's possibilities to do that. So the production and efficiency of milking frequency, a good farmer's going to do well no matter what they choose. You're going to get good production and profitability, whatever they choose. Over the years, I've recorded, I think it's pretty close to 1,500 lactation curves that show that production levels are typically the same, whether we're using mixed milking frequency versus seasonal, all season twice a day. At some stage, it'll be quite good to run a ruler across that, but it's very hard to say what mixed milking frequency is. Is it for a week or for a month or whatever? We're getting some more information. To capture that peak milk curve and better match feed supply, this occurred to me last night. Why are we wasting all that energy on twice a day mid to late lactation? There's a lot of energy those cows use up and people use up and we bring those cows to the shed late afternoon, and the udder doesn't have much in it. If I was a truck driver, I'd be scratching my head and saying, why would we be doing this? The cow condition is usually better. The thing we find is that cow condition becomes cumulative. There's a certain wellness, increased cow wellness. Lameness is reduced. Animal health is better. And is it possible we'll get more lactations out of our cows? The farm assets last longer, and that's the important thing. You know, your cows, your shed, your lanes, your motorbikes last longer. You know, if you can take out 130, 140 milkings in a season, that's tremendous. So here's a case study. One of the guys, you know, people say, oh, you can't do high production if you're doing this milking frequency. Well, here's some people here. I've actually never met them, but they sent through their data. I was talking to someone, they said, well, talk to these guys, and I knew of them. But here's some information they sent through to me. So in 2017 and 18, we'll run through this first column first. This is Paddy and Zoe Berry, and thank you for them from Dunsandel down in Canterbury. They were on twice a day, basically to the end of April. They took their lights out from January, and all their cows are milked once a day. So in kgs of milk solid a cow, they were doing 461 a cow and 1647 a hectare. They did 537 milkings a year down here in the bottom. And it worked out to be 0.86 milkings a year. The following season, in 2018, they said, well, one of the things they explained to me is they've got over 600 cows, and it's a 40-a-side shed, and the milkings are long, so they thought they needed to do something. So they went twice a day till 21st of February. They went 3 and 2 till the 7th of May, and then they went once a day to the end of May. This is the second column here. Their milk solids a cow jumped to 480 a cow and 1826 a hectare. And they took a few milkings out. They dropped to 516 milkings. They did 0.93 milk solids a milking. Last year, in this column here, 1920, they did twice a day till just on Christmas, 27th of December. They did 10 and 7 to the middle of April, and they did 9 and 7 to the end of the May. Here's the crazy thing. They did 516 milk solids a cow, 1900 a hectare, and 464 milkings. And it's 1.1 milk solids a milking. This year, they didn't do twice a day at all. And this really surprised me, and I got a bit of a kick out of this. This really made my eyes open up, as they did 3 and 2 till Christmas Day, and they've done 10 and 7 to the end of May. Somatics are pretty good. Look at this, guys. A 68 to 72,000 somatics. They did 509 a cow still. They did 441 milkings for that year. Their bought-in feeds actually dropped because they had to change one of the irrigation systems, grew a bit more grass. The empty rate did jump up a bit here this last year, 13%, and I understand it was they had to carve a lot of their heifers. They had an Angus bull, and it wasn't particularly helpful, and that increased their not-in calf rate. The good thing here is they've dropped their total milkings down to 441, and when I look at that, they've taken nearly 100 milkings out, and they'll put in, what's that, 25, 35, 37, nearly 38,000 milk solids, and no other real changes. So there's some real efficiencies there. So what I just want to show there is that you can do some pretty stunning production levels. Like, this is exceptional production in anyone's case, just for pasture-based product production. I was very impressed, and thank you to Paddy and Zoe for sharing that. So some other thoughts on milk and frequency. To make a start, you know, if you're going to try it yourself, you could try 13 and 7 and 12 and 7. You know, if you could do one day a week at, say, 10 a.m. or 13 and 7. My friend Noelle Fox, my colleague in Canterbury, she's got a client they've done this year, and they went on 12 and 7 in January, and they dropped off a milking in a month. So they went to 12 and 7 in January. We went 11 and 7 in February, 10 and 7 in March, 9 and 7 in April, and then once a day in May. And that was the way they were able to introduce it slowly. And I thought that's quite a brilliant idea, and it suited these people down to the ground. If it doesn't work for you, you can go back to twice a day. If you try it, you don't have to. You can use one milking regime all season. You can do 3 and 2, 10 and 7, once a day, twice a day, whatever it works. Or you can use several milking regimes in a season. You're going to do what suits your business. Get the logistics right and the feeding right. The key here is to enjoy the weekend and have time with the family. This is one thing that struck me. I did a seminar, similar seminar last week, and one of the questions that came through was, would there be a better match for climatic issues? And I'm not too sure climate change and whatever that means. But as the climate changes and you're under different pressures or opportunities through the season, you can change your milking frequency up and down. If you're sitting there and sort of, you've had a tough summer and it's and you've been on once a day, say January and February, and you get some lovely rain in March and the grass is taking off, chuck in 2 or 3 afternoon milkings. Go 10 and 7 or 9 and 7. Those cows will respond if the feed is there and you've got the cow condition. You think, so, well, I'm not thrashing them, I'm not putting them back on twice, and I'm just going to take a bit more milk out of them. Hey, what would happen if I took 2 or 3 more afternoon milkings in? Would that better match my feed situation, my climatic situation? And inversely, if the weather's unkind, take some milkings out. Now, this is important. Milking frequency, I believe, if you can change it and have some time off and better match what's happening in society and be weekend-centric, it's a real boost of mental well-being. I have one dairy farmer in Murchison, a different chap to the one who started on 14, 16, 18. He always used to ring up, and in those days, you only did 3 and 2 from Christmas time. This is like in the early 2000s, and he'd always ring up in September and say, can I go on 3 and 2 yet? Because he loved it so much, he said, because it takes the pressure off, and I think physically and mentally. So in summary, I'm actually now doing the first trials for once a day, dropping to just 6 milkings in 7 days. So not milking it all on Sunday, but that's a story for another day. With all this milking frequency, be aware we're only limited by our imagination. The cows, and here's the kicker, the cows are so flexible. Can we be too? We can do the production, we can do the productivity. If you do it, you need to get the logistics right. You've got to make it practical, repeatable, and so your staff can understand it. That's why I believe 10 and 7 is so much better than 3 and 2, because it just keeps it simple. There's tremendous interest both here and internationally for 10 and 7 and for changing those milking frequencies. It's great that it's pioneered here in New Zealand, good old New Zealand. And I want you guys, whoever you're listening, look after yourselves, your people, your animals, and your business. Okay.
So we have had a question just pop in through Brent. Can we do 8 a.m. on both weekend days?
Yes, you can. Anything is possible. The only issue you may have is you will have a 24-hour once-a-day break, which will have a greater impact on milk production over that weekend period. But if you're happy with that, do that. If it works for you, I have people who, a couple of clients who have to attend church very early on Sunday mornings. We have them at 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And it works. It can be done. You just have a slightly greater loss in milk production in that weekend. It'll be more of a blip then.
Well, thank you. Brent just got another question here. Do you have any tips for impacts on calf rearing?
Calf rearing, you'd feed them probably after milking on the twice a day one and before milking on the once a day days. It depends whether you're on it depends whether on milk powder or whether they're taking milk out of the vat, etc.
So further information come through in terms of if you're doing once a day milking, the milk would be cold.
Yes, so it may be better off to use milk powder, which is actually cheaper at the moment, significantly cheaper. Where I am, that's for sure. But yeah, you just got to try and work through that. You may have to heat that milk. It may be part of what you've got to do.
Thanks very much, Brent. That was an extremely insightful, informative, comprehensive overview of milking frequency. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. If you know people who would be interested in seeing today's presentation who were unable to join us, please do keep an eye out on the LIC website. We have also been running a series of these Shed Share webinars on a variety of topics, and they are recorded and available on the LIC website. So do check it out for those that you may have missed and the future ones. And as I say, to refresh yourself on the points Brent's covered off today or to share with other people who were unable to join us today. So thank you for joining us again today, folks.